I'd like to call to order the Wednesday, October 25th, 2023 remote participation meeting for the Ayer Affordable Housing Trust at 6:24 p.m. Thank you all for waiting patiently and talking about me in my absence. In accordance with Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, public bodies otherwise governed by the open meeting law are temporarily relieved from the requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be live on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by joining Zoom meeting ID 818-0509-7403 or by calling 929-205-6099. For additional information about remote participation, please contact Alicia Hersey at ahersey@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 142 prior to the meeting. Thank you all. May I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you for the second, Colleen. Do we have any additions or changes to the agenda? Seeing none or hearing none, all in favor? Actually, I'm sorry. Hollywood Squares, Cindy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
And chair votes aye. Thank you. Next on the agenda is to approve the 8/30/23 meeting minutes. May I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, I'll second.
Thanks. Bob, are you talking to us? You're muted, Bob.
Zoom doesn't always work like it's supposed to, but I would just suggest, having read the minutes and you're embroiled in it, that you not use acronyms without defining at least once in the document what the acronym meant. I don't know what RAFT means, or
I have to go back quite a few, and so noted. I will do that from now on, but we've been doing ARAP for so long now that we all know what it means.
no RAFT, but I don't know what RAFT is. What is that RAFT, for instance? Yeah, I don't know.
Rental assistance. That's a state program of rental assistance.
But it would be useful for me.
Yes.
Thank you, Bob. That's a great point. Yeah, Bob, I saw your hands like this. I knew you had something to say.
I was pushing my
Space bar.
and it didn't come off mute, so go figure. So
Go figure. So, okay, no, I appreciate that. That's a great point. Does anybody have any comments about the meeting minutes at this point? So, okay, moved and seconded. Cindy, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Colleen?
Aye.
And chair votes aye, so they are accepted. Public comment. Good evening, Pauline. Have you got anything you want tonight? I don't think so. Anybody else who might be here for public comment? Moving on to the town meeting follow-up on the CPC funding request. Did everybody breathe a sigh of relief? I have to tell you, I had a panic moment walking in that we had bundled together the rental assistance program with the money set aside. And if somebody took issue with the money to be set aside, would we lose our funding for the rental assistance program?
Oh,
Didn't happen, doesn't matter, but let's think about that.
That's just a word for the wise in the future. I had that thought going in. It's like, oh, and it was as I walked through the doors of the venue. But thank you all, everybody, for working on that. Thank you, Sean, for spending the time with the CPC earlier this year. And I'm glad it went very well.
Thank you, Colleen.
Yeah, Colleen.
Yes, although I was not at the meeting where they voted to send it to town meeting, unfortunately. But yeah, I was at the town meeting and happy that all went well and was glad there wasn't any dissent. But we can remember that it is possible to amend it from the floor to lower the amount. So if anybody had been fighting the set aside money, we could have always pulled back.
I fully get that. And we've had.
But I know I get the moment of worry.
I just want to say how well everybody's done on keeping this very communicative towards the community. I feel like a lot of people know what we're doing and understand it, and so they're not questioning it. And I think that's because you guys have done a great job.
And I think the community at large sees the need.
Yes.
I think the times we live in have totally shown everybody that the need is there.
Do we want to break it down for Bob, what we requested from CPC, or were you understanding of it, Bob?
If you could break it down quickly, it doesn't have to be long and drawn out. You know it.
I'm going to go a quick lump sum of $200,000. It breaks down as $72,000 for 12 families to receive rental assistance for 1 year, $3,000 to administer the rental assistance program and have the trust be audited by an external auditor, and $125,000, which is the balance of the amount requested, that will go into a bank account, if you will, for us, so that we can begin to seriously consider entering into an agreement to purchase affordable housing in some way, shape, or form. And the money is there so that we can be earnest should an opportunity come along where we can actually enter into a deal without going to town meeting to ask for the money, because the property may not be there in the future. And we hope to continue to add to that pot over time.
So what would $125,000 buy us in terms of affordable housing?
A down payment.
A down payment, but in order to make that commitment, wouldn't we still need town meeting approval
Yeah, it's a really good question, Bob. And Pauline, I see your hand up. I'll get you in a second. We recognize it's not a huge amount of money in today's world, but it's a starting place, Bob. So if we had a friendly homeowner or landowner who would accept some small token amount of money down so we could get a deal together to take it to town meeting, it at least gives us money to say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Smith, we'd be interested in this piece of property for affordable housing. Can we enter into a deal? And we have skin to put into the game.
Did anybody raise, I couldn't make town meeting, did anybody raise issues with that or concerns?
No.
Oh, that's great.
And as a matter of fact, Jennifer Propadakis decided not to make the presentation from CPC. She had a presentation put together, but when she was asked if she wanted to make the presentation, she waved it off. So
Okay.
that one went pretty quick. Pauline, please. Thank you for being patient.
Thank you, Jeff. Just to make abundantly clear, because I continue to ask this question or make this statement, while those funds for purchasing property or acquiring property does not mean that the town becomes the landlord and builds the affordable housing. It's just the ability to use funds to find property, hopefully find developers, and do all the necessary, but the town will never be the landlord. Do I continue to be correct on that?
Yeah, thanks. And I appreciate that, Pauline. The answer to your question, Bob, is we're going to have to do some work, bring in a piece of property isn't going to be perfect. So if we have to bring in expertise on it, this gives us funding to move towards that. So we put down earnest money, we'd be able to use the money for survey. I can't make it up right now, but
Well, I mean, an example, in fact, would be if Habitat for Humanity house, like we did last time, Pauline and I were on that fundraising.
Yeah. So it improves our position marginally at this point. From zero to something is a huge leap. And I know that in some parts of this country, even today, $125,000 will buy you a place to live. But unfortunately, we live in New England. So I hope, Bob, that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Great. Alicia, you want to make a point?
I was just going to say the last Habitat house was on a property that was taken by tax title, but we had to demolish the old building on it. And I think that was I'm trying to think, it came out of our program income funds to do it, or I'm not sure if that's true. I think it is. It was before my time, but so there's things like if you get a property that even you take from tax title, there's often work that needs to be done. And then we transferred it to Habitat after an RFP. So there's a lot of little pieces to put together. And I know that both this group and the housing committee have been looking to see if there's anything that would work for the habitat.
Thanks.
Again,
Pauline's raised your hand again, please. Pauline, go ahead.
Just really quickly, the town of Ayer was very supportive for 76 Central Ave. But Habitat paid the cost of demolition and excavation and everything else it needed to build the property. It went a little over budget, but we have 2 families here and they're living their dreams. So there's nothing wrong with that.
oh, of course not.
I think we use some CPC money though for.
Absolutely. Yes, we have on all 3 projects, Bob. Thank you for participating.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else want to comment about how town meeting? Good, thank you. Next on our agenda is the Air Rental Assistance Program for FY24. Take it away.
So I started looking at the guidelines and I've been having, I told you, oh, we'll be good with just 2 more and unit, grants available. And part of that is because I really would like us to see, my personal opinion is I'd like us to spend some of this money on actually building units, because rental assistance is great, but if we could build some subsidized units, that's even better. It will help alleviate the housing problem as we put units on to the market. And if we can get them subsidized, that's even better. But as I'm looking at this, we're probably only going to have 2 grants available, maybe 3, when we open this up in January for the FY24 year. We agreed originally that it was going to be a 3-year program where they could stay on it for 3 years, hoping that they would start really figuring out where they were going and what they're doing. I've gotten them, a number of them, working with Brittany, our social worker. So that's good. And with her working with them, we'll have a better idea where they stand and how they're doing. But none of them, they're all very happy to have this rental assistance and nobody seems to be budging. So I want us to revisit the concept of a 3-year program, or should it be a 2-year program? And I just want you guys to have that conversation.
I was curious about that, to be honest with you. And, we're 3 years into it, roughly. We're entering into our 3rd year. So I had a feeling this was going to be a conversation that we would probably have at some point. Can we make that an agenda item for a future meeting so we get a little bit of opportunity to do some, by all means, people, if you have comments about it, let's put them out. But I think this is going to take a little bit of digging and figuring out. My first question, Alicia, is as we open up the program for next year, do you think you're going to have 12 families or more than 12 families who are looking for assistance in the total pot? Well,
last time we had 2 families that did not receive it. Both families were really pushing into the 60% AMI. So I was, 50 to 60% AMI. So I wasn't as worried about them. Our programs, oh, I'm sorry, my phone's ringing over there. So whether I should have made that judgment or not, and both of them said, we're fine. And one of the 2 that I'm talking about, possibly if I had done a deeper dive on their financials, they wouldn't have qualified because they weren't claiming the DoorDash money that they were getting. So it really was one of those things that, and it took a long time to get all those slots filled. So, but now I've got people starting to line up already for January. So now I'm having a little second thoughts on that. But I still do feel that, the rental assistance program shouldn't be the end all be all.
I think we all agree on that. And I had a thought while you were talking is we have people all across the affordability spectrum. You were talking about people at the 50, 60, we've got people at the low end. And I'm curious if I don't know if you can do a sliding scale per years. I don't know. I put that comment on the table. Cindy, you wanted to make?
I just want to clarify. So basically what you're saying is that we're only going to have room for 2 new families because
Maybe
everybody
3.
else is, maybe 3, because everyone else is going to roll over.
Yep.
Well, obviously, people that are already in the program will have to be grandfathered for 3 years. But
Yep.
I feel very strongly that we need to go to 2 years if this is what's happening. I think 2 years is, I'm sorry, I think it's plenty of time for somebody to figure out, a week isn't enough time, a month isn't enough time, but 2 years should be enough time for somebody to figure out what they need to do in order to be more stable. Am I wrong about that?
No,
I-
I think
I don't know. I am of 2 minds on it, but I'm kind of thinking about all the people that we potentially won't be able to help because others are getting a 3rd year that seemed very reasonable in the beginning because we didn't know how many people were going to apply, if anybody would apply. But I don't know. I'm really torn about it.
No, thank you, Cindy. And it's quite obvious. Colleen, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I have a question, Alicia. Do you get the sense that they, like those entering the 3rd year, have maybe put off trying to figure out how to make do without the rental assistance because they were counting on that 3rd year? Or do you think, or,
I think we have to grandfather it in, but what we can think is if we're thinking about going down to 2 years, we can make it starting the FY24 people, that is a 2-year program. Now I'd love to hear from Sean because he works in these programs all the time and he probably has a lot more understanding of what really needs to happen. The other thing that's starting to happen is Brittany has only been with us for about 2 months now. And she's just starting to get in touch with them. I do know of some families that have made plans and others that have not. I know some families that think that they won't be on this. I know others that will be on it for the maximum time that they can be on it. And so, but some of those families, children will have graduated from high school by that time. And I just want to kind of inject something here. Bob, I'll send you all the packet on the rental assistance program with the guidelines and everything like that, so you can see those. Okay. And so that was just one. And the other thing I want us to visit, I'd love to hear from Sean about what he thinks between 2 and 3 years. And the other one is, when I start doing my charts, we always do it at 60% AMI. And I still think that we should consider going down to 50% AMI. And I can do out the numbers and let people know what the difference would be on that too.
Thank you. Sean, you want to jump in and
Yeah, no,
answer?
I think I'm in agreement with Cindy as well in that I think when we started the program, 3 years seemed reasonable just because we didn't know how it was going to go. But it's supposed to help. It's not supposed to be like a long-term thing. So I think 2 years is a more reasonable program. And I think 2 years is enough time for somebody to kind of figure out something else. So I do think if we were to switch it down to 2 years, that would be more appropriate.
Sounds like we have a motion in the making.
So the other thing that'll be interesting, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Jeff, is when we get the applications come January through February, because when we see what kind of applications come in, we can advertise it as a 2-year, but it's something that we can change at any time too.
Yeah. And sorry, I was thinking about this just now as the conversation is happening. The Air Rental Assistance Program is an assistance program to help you move forward.
Yeah.
And instead of saying 2 years or 3 years or whatever, it sounds like 3 may be too long, just given the conversation we have in front of us. 2 might be more appropriate. And is there, without being intrusive in people's lives, is there some way where as people figure out their situation and move on, those dollars could be more valuable to someone else who's looking for assistance. I hate to say it like that, but given limited resources and trying to help, I mean, Cindy, this is the juggling you do, I imagine, every single day of your life. Everyone's got need. How do we decide? That's a huge challenge, and I appreciate Alicia for all that you do for it. But as we look at the program, can it be a little flexible? We don't get locked in. They don't get locked. The people we support don't get locked in. And I'm not saying we rethink the whole thing, but that's kind of where as soon as you said stuff, Cindy, that's where my thought was going. And Pauline, I'm going to ask for Cindy to make a comment, and then I'll come to you. Go ahead, Cindy.
So when you were just talking, it occurs to me that there's nothing that prevents us from giving people an extra year, but we can't take one away.
Mm-hmm.
If we say the program is 1 year with the possibility of an extension for a second, instead of saying it's a 2-year program, it's a 1-year program with the possibility of an extension for a second. And that doesn't mean that we can't then say, okay, we've decided you can have another extension. But if we say it's a 2-year program or 3, which we never did say that. But if that's sort of the expectation, then you can't take it away then. You know what I mean? It's all, a lot of it is in how it's phrased. And I think that we phrased it properly. But the expectation now is that if I get into this program, I can be on it for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I think we have to change that expectation to, you're on this program for a year, you might get a second year. Or if we decide that we want to be more, we want it to be longer than that, emphasize the 2-year, but not beyond that. I'm not saying it right. But
Actually, I think, Cindy, you're crystal clear. And Pauline, I'm gonna ask one more. Patience, Alicia put her hand up.
So there's 2 more pieces. There's so many moving pieces on this.
Alicia,
Yes.
Pauline's had her hand up patiently. Can I ask her for her input before we jump to another topic? Thanks, Pauline.
I was going to let Alicia go because maybe she will cover what I was going to suggest. But my thought is, following Cindy's train, can there be language, Alicia, that an applicant who is no longer eligible under the 1 or 2 year plan, which I totally support, could they not just reapply? We don't know where other applicants will be. They may have moved on, but there's a way to add in, if you are no longer eligible for the 1 or 2 year plan, however the committee decides, you can reapply. Habitat does that very frequently.
Back into the pool, essentially. After your first year, you basically get thrown back into or after your second year, whatever we
Exactly. Thank you, Cindy.
So just because you're on the program now and you still qualify, that doesn't automatically mean that you're going to get the second year. You kind of get thrown back in the pool, and if there's other people that need the help more, you might get bumped. I don't know how I feel about that, but it is a possibility. It's something that we could talk about more. Does anybody have any feelings about that?
Alicia, please.
So what I took away from what you were saying, Cindy, and I think it's a great idea, and what I will work on before next meeting, is opening up that language so you guys have more flexibility so the one thing that I wanted to tell you is that people aren't getting into senior housing, the state subsidized senior housing, without being homeless. So if you have a home, which we are helping them have a home, then they really, their names aren't coming up. There's an emergency list so you're basically, the people coming out of the shelters, the people who are homeless are the ones that are getting the spots in the senior housing. And that's difficult because a number of these people are on the wait list for senior housing. And until this backlog gets taken care of, as long as they can maintain their home, they're not going to actually be eligible. So is an argument for the longer time period. But what we might be able to do is open up the language so it's not a guarantee, but we can choose to help a more needy family if we need to. After they're not guaranteed the 2 or 3 years, but just give you guys the decision on that.
Thank you. You asked how I feel, Cindy. I'm angry at the situation I find us in right now.
Yeah.
And that's I'm sorry, Bob, I wasn't looking up when you put your hand up. That's just, I'm angry. Anger won't get us anything. I'm going to be quiet. Bob, you had a comment, I think.
No, I think the key is just setting the expectation. I think that's the key operative word. Cindy mentioned it, and I just think, Alicia, just like when somebody applies, they're applying for 1 year with a possibility of additional years, but setting that expectation that it's only 1 year and happens.
Yeah. And I think that's where this conversation is going. If you ask me, to kind of, we're talking about, we knew what we were doing. We were helping families get stabilized. And I'll make another comment. We now live in a world 3 years later where where the underpinnings of how we understand housing for people who are unhoused has changed dramatically. It has. The state is now housing, unhoused people first, as opposed to people who lived on a list. It's funny, I overheard a conversation when I was doing stuff last Thursday, and this is exactly what they were talking about, Alicia, and I didn't stop to ask because they were very upset, the people who were having this conversation, and now I think I understand what it was. Colleen, did you have a...
I was going to say, I think the other benefit to pulling back to saying a year, and what we didn't have 3 years ago was a social worker in town to help these people, and now we have this support, and hopefully with that 1 year, is what you're guaranteed, and you may or may not be able to continue on. It may get people working with the social worker a little quicker, and maybe coming up with a plan sooner. And for those that need the extra time, we have that flexibility to offer it, but at least we know we have more supports in place to help them move forward.
Cindy, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I did. And Colleen said pretty much exactly what I was going to say, is that we did nothing wrong when we put this thing together. We did not have a social worker. We have one now, and hopefully we'll keep that social worker. And okay, you get a year and you need to get your butt into a meeting with her and have her help you work out where you're going to go next. That could be something that we not necessarily require, but
It is required.
Is it required? Okay, good. It should be. It should be that they work with somebody. I knew that we had something in place that you need to be moving toward it, but how explicit is it? So that's good. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is, I'm of course end gaming this conversation in my head, and it sounds to me like, and this may be a drastic way to say it, and somebody else say it a different way, but the Area Rental Assistance Program exists, and should you qualify, you get a year's breathing room. I don't know how to say that another way, but you're going to have to reapply. It takes away the 3 years and you're out, because I have a feeling we are going with the senior happening the way it is. Alicia just described it. We've got some folks who are way down there, below the national poverty, not just Middlesex County. And boy, I don't know if I could look at myself once a week in the mirror when I do. Should a senior lose their housing because they can't be in the program because of what's happened in the world around us? So I think the program is designed as a needs-based program. And maybe it's when you get it, it's a year. Now, this brings a question to my mind is, we've always picked the calendar year, but I think, Alicia, we discovered that it has to be rolling because people can't get their paperwork together. We're working with landlords. We're working with humans. They're not just like January 1st, you're in, and December 31st, you're out. So do we end up with formalizing a rolling system that if
If
you're
it
in the
was
program, you get a
rolling-
year. Go ahead.
If it was rolling, then we would have, then at this point, we have 2 people on the wait list, but I've got several people waiting to go in January who are very needy, the 2 people on the wait list. I guess I would have to start asking people whenever they ask me for the application. The advantage of having them all put their applications in at the same time is then we can do a comparison of the need.
Mhm.
I think you have to keep it that way, and it's very unfortunate that people can't get help halfway through the year or whatever, but I think it makes it absolutely impossible, first of all, for Alicia to figure all of this out. We're asking her to compare apples and oranges if that's the case. And if we're going to do this type of thing, where we throw everybody back into the pot at the end of the year, then it has to be a common starting time. And I'm sorry that
No, don't be. I appreciate I appreciate what you're saying, Cindy. I'm just asking the question. So
I'm apologizing to you. I'm apologizing to the world. I'm sorry it's not perfect, but we can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Let's get going. And we did. We got going, and we did a few things that, now we're rethinking. Okay.
I think, sorry, go ahead, Colleen.
No, what I was going to say, though, following up on Cindy, is I think that we still have to honor the 1 year. So somebody who gets their application in January, it takes a while for the landlord to get the paperwork in. They don't start getting the money until March or April. We might make them reapply in January, but even if they don't get selected, they have to get the money through March or April whenever they
Yes.
started. And so just as long as we are, consistent with that, I think. But I think,
the award is for 12 months, is what you're saying, Colleen.
Yes.
Right.
The assistance is for 12 months. It may not physically start for whatever reason, but in December, if they think they're going to need it in the next year, they need to be back in the reapply pool.
Yes.
Even though they've got 2 or 3 more months left on the resources that we've given them.
Yeah.
That they've been awarded.
That's not fair to make Alicia stagger this through the whole year. I mean, she's got other things to do.
Oh, I'm running. We only get to meet once in a while, and I'm just kind of running that. Cindy, I don't do. Yeah. I'm being somewhat of the advocate along the way because, I mean, quite honestly, our world has shifted dramatically in the last couple of years. And
I'm agreeing with you. I don't know why you're thinking that I'm arguing with you.
No, I'm just I had a great experience. I'll tell you offline, Cindy. I had a great experience with some people not from this country yesterday on a tour, and it really opened my eyes to some things. So, Alicia, did you just have another point you wanted to make?
No, this gives me something to work on. I'll try and get everything out to people enough in advance that they can take a good look at it so we can talk about it next meeting.
And to the rest of the members of the trust, Alicia and I do talk every now and again. I think I called you Cindy a moment ago, Alicia. I'm sorry. But, Alicia, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. I know you and Colleen worked on this in the last year, and I think Cindy worked on it also kind of as a subgroup.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know who it was then. But let's don't think you're off on your own. I say it all the time. You chop wood and carry water for us, and we really appreciate it. But there are times when you need help, and don't wait, please.
Well, the guidance that you guys just gave is very helpful.
Thank you.
Now do your magic and make it perfect.
There isn't perfect.
Absolutely. And there it is. Next on our agenda is the future of housing in Ayer, a review. Who made it? This is the thing we did with Janet last week, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So Cindy was there, I was there. Sean, Bob was there, and Colleen, you're odd person out.
No, I wasn't there at a late meeting at work, so
It's okay.
Good moment time.
It's okay. Who wants to take it? I talked too much. Who wants to? Pauline's got her hand up. Pauline, go ahead.
That mute button is awful. I was there, just so you know.
Oh, yeah, Pauline, I'm sorry. We knew you were there. I was talking about,
Thank you.
you were excluded because you're not a trust member at this
Yeah,
point.
I understand, but I
But-
was there.
But we
I
feel like
hope
you're
not
there.
to say anything.
Yeah, no, we feel like, so anyway,
So maybe you can all fill me in.
it was wicked helpful. It was wicked good. I didn't do the first one. Alicia, you want to take a quick, or Sean or somebody?
I can give an overview, but I'd love to
Yeah.
hear feedback about what people gained from it and what people didn't. What I really appreciated was how many people were talking about these issues and just talking. Because as soon as you engage people and they actually engage and start thinking about solutions, then you're halfway there. And it felt to me like people were engaged. It felt to me like people were, I took away and I almost brought them tonight, and maybe we'll have an in-person meeting. The pictures were very, very interesting that everybody put their little dots on. And we really do like to see what is in the mind of people. And it really is. People are looking for smaller homes on smaller, and more density, whether it's downtown in, mixed use buildings, or whether it's smaller homes on smaller lots. Smaller or more dense really came out very strongly with those little stickers. And that means that what we've been talking about and what we've been thinking about, but it has really rung true for people. But it also tells us what we should be trying to do. How do we create that small home? I mean, there was not one sticker that did not like those Westford little houses in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that one?
Yeah.
So
Alicia, I'm going to jump in for a second. So
yeah.
Colleen, there were about 20 examples of small housing and high density housing, like apartment buildings that were stuck along the wall, and you were given colored stickers to put on them. And I think what Alicia's saying is some of them really did float to the top pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were pictures of housing, and you put a sticker on it, and some of us we recognized, some of it we had no idea what it was. So that's what, I had no idea what, I read the agenda. It said dots and pizza. And dots to me are those little gummy things, like gummy bears. I had to ask Janet what it was. But yeah, go ahead, Alicia. Yeah.
No, go. I'd like to hear everybody's view of that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I
Go ahead, Cindy. Yeah.
I loved that part the best. And it wasn't all small housing, Colleen. Some of it was it was all affordable housing. So one or two of the examples were our big new developments with the huge houses on big tracts, but one of them was affordable. So those did not get voted very high. But what I really liked about that whole exercise is, as I was doing it, I was talking with the people around me, and we're like, oh yeah, I like that one. Oh, I don't like that one. I'm going to put my red sticker over your green sticker. But we were talking about it as we were going, and it was so interesting. On a couple different occasions, somebody would say, oh, I really like that one. And I'd say, oh, I just don't like the style. And they're like, oh, no, it's not the style. It's the fact that it's dense, or all of these different aspects of it came out. It's not always about how it looks. It was about how it's set in the property. It's about, again, the buildings downtown that have apartments on the top, the mixed use buildings and stuff. Not everybody likes that, but that's a great way to get more housing, in the area, especially in the MBTA area.
Mm-hmm.
It was fascinating. That was really, I was surprised by some of the reasoning that people had for why they liked some of the stuff they liked.
Yeah. I think Bob, thank you, Cindy. Bob, you put your finger up. Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't present. I had to leave right before the breakouts, but
Mm-hmm.
I thought the meeting was great. I thought the attendance was, I don't know what you were expecting, but I thought it was, of course, food brings people out, but still, it was very good. I also liked the picture exercise, and I have sort of a bias towards tiny houses, having been built one or two. That it could be a solution, even for $125,000. You can buy a tiny house and house somebody. So it's just a matter of where that could go and how it could be zoned so that it could fit in there. Um, Alicia, I liked your slides, and I like Alan's slides too. If you could get those up on the website,
Yes.
that would
Thank
be
you for
fabulous.
reminding
So
me.
because they had a lot of good data about affordability, about income in our town, specific
Yeah.
levels. And even Ron, although he went over his talk, uh, it's just mind-boggling the price of in air. Never would have expected it here in our town. So
Yeah.
Well, so go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, so it started out, Colleen, with the dots exercise, and then we went through a couple of presentations. Alan did a little bit of the Alan Minoyan show, which was good. And Alicia sat up and started talking about affordability. Unfortunately, we didn't have a large enough screen, so really all could see what it was. But we began to start to get the impression of, and I may be doing this out of order, the impression of where affordability is and how people and what's happening and what's changing in our area. Ron Morrison went through a market overview from 1986 coming forward, which I thought was interesting because that was when MLS started. I was a broker before MLS. We had to do it the hard way. And he talked about rentals and stuff like that. It was 3 different views of our market. And if you paid attention, you could kind of band together information from all the 3 different presentations, and you cherry pick some and forget about others. But it became, you began to get a full picture of what's going on, number one. Now, you guys don't know this about me, but I count things. Like I can tell you how many ceiling tiles there are in the downstairs meeting room and how many lights there are because I get bored and I count. I know how many vents there are over your left shoulder, Colleen, in your AC unit. Okay. There's 30 of them. And I keep checking. There were 68 people in the room, my largest number of people counting, not including the people I could quickly identify as videographers or stuff like that. We had 6 breakout groups of between 5 and 7. So we had presentations and we all broke out and we had a handful of questions to answer, like what's good about Ayer? And to me, and Bob, I'm sorry you left during this, but I actually sat with the Copelands and Christina, who works with Susan Copeland. And I forget who else is in that group, Sean. At one point, we had a couple of employees, and Cindy was in it. And it's crazy. Like, really nice people who work at Town Hall came up as a benefit of Ayer. A police department and a fire department who are really approachable and care about their jobs. I mean, the things that you wouldn't think about that make a town a wonderful place to live came up. And then other groups did that too. And of course, we've got the best clerk in the world that came up too at the end. I'm being a little facetious there. So that was a really good thing. And Bob, to your point about the food, I was in the town hall today. They still had food left over. Yeah, they had cookies still today. Pauline put her hand up. Go ahead, Pauline, please.
Thank you, Jeff. As a resident who attended that meeting, I want to share with this committee my disappointment. I wrote a treatise, if you will, to Janet the following morning, and I won't go through all that. But of the people in the room, for all of you who may or may not have been there were about 35 people, and at almost 30 of those were either town employees, elected, or appointed officials. I counted 5 residents, without including myself, who were not in any position. So, number one, that's very disappointing to me because the residents didn't learn anything from this because most of the people there were town officials. And I share that. And you've commented on a couple of things, so I won't go there with Ron Morrison and Alan Minoyan. But what I would like to say is that I heard nothing about how we provide more affordable housing in Ayer. And I did not stay for the breakouts. I can't hear in a breakout session. I struggled to hear as it was because of my issues with hearing. But I would really like to see some kind of summary about this, because I don't think residents really get it. When I say residents, those of us who have no involvement in town government. I think the effort was great. I applaud Janet for doing it. I applaud Alicia for all she does. I applaud this committee for all it does. But let's not delude ourselves with thinking, oh, everybody understands because nobody opposes. That's not how it works, and we all know that, right?
Yeah, thank you. And Alicia, yeah. And
So-
good evening, Pat. Good to see you. Or see your computer. But go ahead, Alicia, yeah.
So, I am trying to get feedback before we do our condensing of what happened there, because we always write the minutes and all that sort of thing. One of the things that I was very interested in is what actually resonated, and the picture exercise. Alan and I sat there afterwards and said, how do we get to know why people put a blue dot on this or a green dot on that, or, a yes or a no? And that's something that we're still working on. How can we do that exercise and get more information? But this process, the first time we did this process was in 2019, and it was when we were writing our housing production plan. This one is because we've been talking a lot with doing some zoning changes, and we really wanted to start hearing what people were looking for. And even just doing that exercise and understanding that people really do want smaller homes and they want to figure out how to get smaller lots could really change what comes out of this. And the really successful thing was we had so many boards who are dealing with our zoning and our planning, and so many members from those boards there, that they were talking and listening to people. And I think that's a really advantageous thing, because as we start going forward and looking at the zoning and what zoning changes need to happen to make all this happen, whether we're talking density downtown or whether we're talking tiny homes or any of that sort of thing, that's important that all those people who are on those boards are there.
Thank you. Pauline, put your hand back up.
I did, Jeff.
Go
Thank you
ahead.
for recognizing
Yeah.
me. Here's a blurb from what I sent to Janet. Sure, all the new shiny houses are being sold, but not to locals. My little house, which I paid $111,000 for in 1994, is now worth more than 4 times that. That is incredibly sad for first-time homeowners. As has happened for decades in other towns east of Ayer, Ayer residents are being pushed out of Ayer by all this mega building. I did not hear one suggestion to put an end to it. I'm not going to criticize anybody. But truthfully, I am in Ayer for a lot of reasons, not the least of which I could afford to live here when I moved here from Concord, because Concord has gone through exactly what we are going through now. And I stay involved with this and with Habitat because we all need to put an end to it. That's my personal view, and that's why I support what all you do.
Thank you. Yeah. Bob, yeah.
I am sort of, so I think the key is to encourage developers to come in to provide denser housing, more affordable housing, and I think that has to come from zoning. So from what I understand, isn't there some sort of edict from the state that we have to modify our zoning by such and such a time? So, who,
And
zone-
yeah, I'm gonna jump in and say yes, Bob, and that's a conversation we're gonna have at another time between you and me. But
Okay.
yeah, no, it's called the MBTA zoning, and believe it or not, we don't have to modify our zoning. There are only two communities that already comply with the MBTA zoning guidelines, and that is Fitchburg and Ayer. And there's a pat on the back to the people who saw it coming and got us there. And form-based code is one of the ways we got there.
Great.
I think, yeah. So
But
whether
our
and
for-
and
Sorry.
excuse me, but there's a caveat to that, Bob, was with everything. People's right to own land in America and do what they want with it has guidelines called zoning. But you can't shut your doors and say you can't move here because X. Our 40B project will not be a local preference project because you can't do it the way the laws are written. So we've written a future zoning code that will allow the density needed for MBTA edict. Whether or not it gets built, no one can control that.
Right.
But so that's just so you understand. That was the way it was put forward. And I don't want to go any deeper into that, Bob. You know where I live. By all means, stop by. We'll have a long conversation about it. It's both frustrating and nice to know we can do. We did it. So it happened so easily. It was a math problem for us, honestly, and it worked out really well. Yeah, Alicia.
Really quickly, because we don't want to spend all night here. So
Mhm.
yeah, so let's just tie this up. But one other thing that came forward, so we have a working, so we've been talking about what to do on the zoning and going into the A1 and A2 districts. When Alan and I went out to take the photographs, something like Curly Circle, which really made tighter, denser, more housing. Yes, they were expensive houses, and yes, that is another issue, and we are talking about how to deal with that issue. And then looking at something like Pleasant Street Extension that just had acre plus lots. And what was very interesting on the picture process was that pretty much everyone's in agreement. They don't want to see that. So something the planning board can think about is, what do we want A2 and A1 to look like? Do we want more open space and more dense, smaller lots with more density? And the other thing that we need to look at is, how do we make our inclusionary housing work, where they are required that every landlord, every builder is required to give something towards affordable housing. And so those are the two subjects that a number of us have been talking about, and we so much wanted to hear where people were at on that, but we were having the first conversation, which was just framing everything.
Yeah. And it's going to be an iterative process, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to talk about how we did the inclusionary and how we did stuff like that. And like I said, we're working in a world where the forces are outside of our little town. I mean, honestly, we've done inclusionary, we've done affordable, we've made a lot of changes to our zoning in the last 10 years. Aside from streamlining it and cleaning it up and changing a few things to prescriptive zoning, which is catching on elsewhere. But we still are minimum square footage above a number that makes sense in the current economy. People are looking for a number smaller than that. So it's an iterative process, and that's working out right now. Let's not forget that a lot of hard work has been, and not because I did it. I'm not talking about this because I'm very proud of where planning is in this town. A lot of people have done a lot of work on it. But when you look forward, your crystal ball only sees so much. And there's been a lot of changes lately. No one really saw MBTA zoning. We got lucky with form-based code. Cindy, yes.
Well, we just have to remember, and I know you know this, Jeff, I'm just saying this, for general, whoever's watching this video, we have to remember that we have to entice a developer to come and to do what we want them to do. If they buy the land, we can't make them build what we want them to build.
Perfect. Exactly. Yeah.
Have to make it attractive to them to want to come here and do that. The land that was owned, the end of Pleasant Street, that's not what the developer wanted to do, and we can't force them to build smaller, denser homes just because that's what we want.
Exactly.
We force them to make one of them an affordable because they went over the magic number. But how is one of those homes going to be affordable with a small a? I mean, we can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
it's not.
exactly.
Fit the definition of big A affordable. It's not truly affordable for anybody who's on any kind of a budget.
You would need an automobile and stuff like that. And, to that end, without using names, we have 127 properties the developer did on the old ski slopes.
Yep.
140 acres, 127 units.
Yep.
In my time here, which is just about 10 years at Thanksgiving, we've done 96 units on less than a mile of road. There's between 4.5 and 6 miles of road, depending on how you count the roads in that ski jump area. If they cost the same, the density gives us a tax base that pays our bills longer with 90 people. And of those 90, we do have some affordables in there. Mm-hmm. But it's just, that's where the world's going to. The mark, Shaker Mill Pond, he wanted to do it dense. He was willing to put in multi townhouses. Worked. He didn't build all the units he could have built. He could have built more in there. But it also, there's a give and take under our OSRD. I know you might look at the one that we call it Curly Circle, that's off of across from the Jarvis Ford second parking lot. If you go over there and look around and then look across the street and look back into it, that's a neighborhood. Those people love it. And it fits. But who would have thought 30 units in there made sense?
Yeah.
So we're seeing things are changing. They're not the highest end expensive. I get it. But there is a group of people who want to live in this town who can afford it. And they're going to help pay into the tax base, which will support services for hopefully more people. I mean, we need them both. Mm-hmm. And as Cindy put it, so you can't tell people no what they can and can't build. I don't want to go any farther because it is 7:21. And hi, Pat, I did get your note. Thank you for sending that.
Wait a minute, I'm trying.
Oh, now you're muted. You're unmuted. There you go.
Okay, I'm really sorry. Comcast was giving us an upgrade. God help me.
Well, you didn't check with us, did you, Pat?
Well, if there was another option, I'd have taken it, let me tell you.
Yeah, Pat sent me a note saying Comcast was doing her upgrade and she'd join us when she could. Go ahead, Cindy.
Well, at our next meeting and then adjourn because I gotta sorry.
I got it. So I was looking at my calendar. We're the last Wednesday of the month. The last Wednesday of the month is 29th. We could do the second. It's a 5-week month next week, but the 22nd, I'm going to guess people will be busy on the evening of the 22nd, Wednesday night. So would the 29th work for people?
It would work better for me, I know that.
Yeah. So why don't we put our stake in the ground, 6:15 on November 29th. And at that meeting, let's talk about whether or not we should meet on the 27th. If we can get stuff done, I know we do the year turn for our affordability stuff, but if we can get it done on the 29th of November, what do you say we try and take a break in December if possible?
I can tell you right now, I won't be in town.
I'm planning to not be in town either that week at this point. And finally, Bob Williams, I believe, will be appointed by the select board on Tuesday evening to become a full member of the trust.
Thank you. I hope so.
And I'll ask other people to take a look at their what year they're up for when they roll up in the trust, and I'll get the dates with Alicia. And if you want to remain on the trust, we just have to resubmit a letter of interest to the select board so it gets rolled over. Thank you. Anything else, anybody? Cindy, would you make a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn. Let's get out of here.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Colleen. Thank you all. All in favor?
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Thanks all. Have a great night now.